Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
If Britain left the European Union, we could strip out EU laws that hold small firms back. That is what the Employment Minister, Priti Patel, will argue today. In a speech to retailers, she will say that red tape has a disproportionate impact on small businesses, and it's only by leaving that the UK could get rid of the bureaucratic excesses of Brussels and replace them with sensible, proportionate British laws. Well, Priti Patel joins me here in the studio now. She's, of course, a member of the Vote Leave campaign. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
What laws would you get rid of?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, let's put this in the context of the vast reams of laws and regulations that stymie small businesses. And this is specifically about small businesses and the fact that we have no say over the amount of regulation and red tape that comes and affects UK small businesses. And I think it's worth recognising as well that the Prime Minister wanted this as well during his renegotiation. This is exactly what he was fighting for too. And the European said no. European Union said no to getting changes here. So there are a range of regulations that cover all sorts of issues, basically, whether it's food, consumer regulation, design regulations that have impacts on British products and the way that they are made and how they're labelled and how they're packaged. But the point here is that this is regulation and red tape that is effectively holding back British businesses, and we have no say. These are regulations and rules that come to us and are gold-plated and implemented and just signed through without the United Kingdom and the British government having a say over the actual impact that it'll have on the cost of doing business.
So it's packaging that you point to. Is that your big...
Well, it's actually a range. It's everything to do with cutting across sort of enforcing power levels for particular products, whether it's vacuum cleaners, standards for kettles, toasters, but also silly labelling requirements as well, whether it's on food or even water. And the point is that when it comes to the costs of labelling, regulation, this costs British business. It has an impact on small businesses in particular.
The reason for those regulations, is so that you comply with the rules that mean you can trade in a level market, you can trade in the single market. Without them, they could quite rightly say, you can't have access to our market.
Well, I fundamentally disagree with that, because I think we have to, and what I'm calling for as well, and again, this is something that, members of my government, my political party, even Nick Clegg as well, has previously called for this too, is that we have an audit of the regulations so that we assess which ones are the most appropriate ones that should obviously be put through, appropriate and relevant, without adding more costs and more burdens to small businesses. And I emphasise this is for small businesses, not the big multinationals who have all the power and all the leverage in Europe. Are
you happy that the bigger businesses are hit effectively by not getting access to the single market in order to improve things for smaller businesses?
Well, of course, they are not hit because they have a disproportionate amount of power and say when it comes to lobbying and influence in Europe, unlike those small businesses who rely on their government, who rely on their members of the European Parliament to be their advocates and champions, and they simply do not have a voice because we are not able to stem back that tide of red tape and regulation. We are outvoted when it comes to the decision-making in the European Union and its institutions. And fundamentally, our small businesses do not have a say, and they have no choice but to comply.
You call for an audit because you want to know what are the costliest regulations. Open Europe did one, and top came the UK Renewable Energy Strategy, something which broadly has public support. Second, the CRD4 package, this is capital requirements, which was an international agreement as a result of the banking crisis. Third, the Working Time Directive. Again, that's something that gives people a break after 6 hours of work, 4 weeks paid leave every year, 39, the sort of things that people actually want. So you look at what are the most expensive directives from the EU, and they're generally things people want.
Yes, but actually, let's put this into the right context. I'm speaking about small businesses for a start, and the impact of regulations and red tape on small businesses. This isn't about the...
So should the Working Time Directive not apply to them?
Let's be very clear, this is categorically not about workers' rights or rolling back workers' rights at all. And let's be very clear, the European Union has done nothing to bolster workers' rights at all. It was the British Parliament and British governments that have stood up and introduced workers' rights. That has nothing to do with the European Union. And actually, I find it bizarre and hugely ironic that, other politicians are willing to attribute some of the policies when it comes to rights of workers to Brussels, when actually that's been the British Parliament.
Okay, but I'm trying to get a handle on exactly what would change, because you're presumably not talking about the renewable energy strategy. You're not talking about working time directive, as you say. What are you talking about beyond packaging that actually is of a significant cost and therefore would make a difference?
Well, of course. Let's be clear as well. If you look at surveys from British businesses, they themselves have all spoken. Even the CBI that has huge lobbying clout in Brussels, they all speak about the impact of regulations and red tape and the cost of regulations and red tape on British businesses. I'm speaking about small businesses and regulations that range from.
You're right. Everybody, all the people you mentioned talk about changing, but say, look, if we want to change it, let's stay within the EU because the benefits outweigh the cost.
Well, my point is,
it's worth leaving. What is the benefit of leaving? What is going to change significantly for these small businesses?
Well, the benefit of leaving and the big change for small businesses is that they will have a say over those regulations and those rules and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Hence the reason why I'm calling for an audit. Big businesses have all the lobbying clout in Brussels with the European Union institutions. And not only that, as I've already said,
from
Sarah,
outside a single market?
Our voice is unheard. It is simply not listened to when it comes to regulations and red tape. We are constantly outvoted.
But can I just get from you then that the benefits to small businesses, which you say would result, outweigh the costs to big businesses, and therefore the UK would be better off? Is that part of your argument?
Fundamentally, my argument is, and this is why I'm saying we should vote leave, because not only would we be able to liberate British businesses from the meddlesome EU regulations and rules, British business would have the freedom to succeed, they'd have the ability to thrive and grow. But on top of that, of course, the British option when we leave the European Union on the basis that we are the 5th largest economy in the world means that we will have the ability to trade more, do more business,
yes, but you're saying that again, but beyond packaging, I'm still struggling to see what single law would change, would be replaced by a sensible British one as opposed to a rubbish EU
Sarah,
one.
I've already said several times, we would have a full audit of all the EU regulations and meddlesome items, red tape.
But if you're so sure it's the case, can't you point to one now?
British businesses. I've already given you some examples ranging from the eco-design regulation,
packaging,
the food and information consumers regulation, nutrition and health claims regulations. These are regulations that have a cost to British businesses. And those small British businesses do not have a voice in Brussels. Let's be very clear. The CBI, the large organisations that have all the lobbying clout, have a voice and a very strong voice. And it's small British businesses that rely on their politicians and their members of the European Parliament to stand up for them. But of course, they're completely outvoted constantly.
Thank you very much.